Greg, last time we were talking, I forgot to hit record for the first about hour of our conversation, and
Right.
we talked about some really cool stuff. And I wanted to have you revisit some of those things for me today, if you don't mind.
All right. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So the first one that you introduced me to last time was this cycle of thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. And so that's what we're looking at right now on the screen. And I'm just going to let you take me through it, my friend.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for inviting me, or thanks for sending out the invite for this. This is the way it works in my brain, and this is what I would like to go through in terms of putting it into a bigger context for spiritual growth. This is not just how can I feel better about myself, but this is about how can I actually use this as a tool for moving up in levels of consciousness or spiritual growth, or however you want to put that. We are born with not a lot of beliefs. I don't think we're probably born with any. We might have some karmic tendencies when we're born. We're born into some certain society. We're born into a certain country. We're born into a certain class. All that stuff. But we learn all the stuff that we learn. That's not a big. That's not new information for anybody. But what we end up with is a set of beliefs. And these beliefs come from just not just from our parents, but they come from the surroundings that we are. It comes from our schooling. It comes from everything, even just our observations. I mean, we believe that gravity works. We believe that the sun's going to come up in the morning. Those kinds of things. So everything that we encounter gets programmed into our brain as a belief at some level. Now, that's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, that's the way it works. But when we have these beliefs, there's many beliefs that we don't really know are there. And that's where, if we don't know that they're there, they can start to maybe cause some problems. But let's talk about this. I have this approach that no belief is true. And I sent that to you on the text. That's kind of the introduction to this material, that no belief is true. And the reason I say that no belief is true is that you really don't know it. You don't really know that something is absolutely true. The only thing is you can have observations and you can think it's true, and it might be true, and it looks like it's true because it works every time, but you don't know what's absolutely true. Now, I go into some definition about true and truth and all that. We don't have to do that right now. I just want you to see how this cycle works. We have this series of beliefs that come in, and they start out when we're little, and they grow and grow and grow. The beliefs actually trigger our emotions. Now, this is actually backwards from a lot of people. When a lot of people think that our emotions are just there automatically, and they think that our emotions that they just show up. But all the emotions, based on my approach here, is that they are based on beliefs. So when the beliefs that you have, they trigger. Now this is where we are on the thing. They trigger emotions. They energize. They spark. They ignite. They electrify the emotions. I'm going to go around through this real quick, and then we'll talk about the implications. The emotions, when you're stuck in an emotion of any kind of an emotion, it could be joy, or it could be fear, or it could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be any of that stuff. Then the emotion is what triggers thoughts. They nourish, they encourage, they engender, they harbor these thoughts. Now the thoughts could come in by the thousands, and then you could have thoughts over and over and over again, and the thoughts can end up justifying, supporting, rationalizing, and validating the beliefs. So then you get stuck in this circle. Now because my thoughts justify, support, rationalize, validate my beliefs, now you're in a circle. The beliefs, they continue to trigger, they continue to energize, ignite, and spark the emotions. The emotions continue to produce more thoughts. The thoughts end up reinforcing the beliefs. And this goes on for your entire life. So if you're mad about something, if you're mad about something, then you have a belief about it. That's I'm going to go through these now the way that it looks to me. So you have some sort of a belief. You're mad about something. So that means that you think something is wrong. So you have a belief that something is not the way that it should be. So when you get mad about it, then all of a sudden you start having all these thoughts in your head, And then the thoughts just reinforce they shouldn't have done that, or they shouldn't be like that, or they shouldn't have said that to me. And then I get mad, and then I creates the emotions, and it could go back into reinforcing and making that emotion turn anger into something even greater and something even bigger. And then the thoughts come up with even more ways to justify and support and rationalize the beliefs. So you see how that works so far?
Yeah, totally.
It's no big deal when it's a good feeling, if it's a joyful feeling, if it's love, if it's anything like that. But if it's something that's bothering you, if it's all those negative emotions, if it's anger, fear, jealousy, all those things, then you start to go, well, what is it about these beliefs that's triggering it, and what is it about the emotions that's fostering it? And then what you do is you question those beliefs. And so I'm going to say that when you question those beliefs, then that starts to release that cycle. When you release that cycle, you question that belief, and then all of a sudden you go, well, is that true? The premise of my approach is that no belief is true. And you start to question that belief, and you go, well, how do I know that's true? How do I know that that was their intent? How do I know that that's what they meant? Or how do I know that that's absolutely true? And we can go deeper into that if you want to, but the way that affects it is that what would it sound like if you didn't believe that? What would it feel like? What would the emotion be if you didn't believe that belief? And it sounds a little bit, this has a flavor of it, of the work. And when I read the work by Byron Katie, I said, well, it applies right on top of this. So I'm not certainly taking anything away. She's got a way of doing it, and it's phenomenal. If you don't like this, you can read that. But this has a different implication to it. So you say, well, what would it be like? What would I feel like? Or what would my life be like if I didn't have that belief? Well, I might have different thoughts if I didn't have those feelings. And if I didn't have if I had different kinds of thoughts, I might feel better. They might not bother me, and I might not be as mad, and I might not go back to the belief, and it wouldn't reinforce that same belief. So when we question the belief, we actually take it to the next level. This is where it's completely different from anything I've ever seen before. When you question your belief, you go to another level of context, because you zoom out one more level, and you're now at a different level. I got some different drawings that show how that works, but this is just the very first drawing. Mm-hmm. And when you zoom out, when you're in a different level, and you have different kinds of beliefs, or if you don't have the same beliefs, you're going to have different kinds of emotions, or the emotions won't be as strong. And if you don't have the same emotions, you'll have different kinds of thoughts, or the thoughts won't bother you as much, or they won't be the same. They won't have the same negative implication, and you won't be stuck in that cycle anymore. So here's how it affects me personally. If I get mad about something, I'll say, well, do I know for sure that that's what they meant? Or do I know for sure that I have all the facts? And I'll be honest, is you don't ever have all the facts, ever. I mean, and you have to be omniscient to have all the facts about any particular situation. So if you don't have all the facts, then is my emotion 100% justified? You can say yes or no, but the answer is probably not if you don't have all of the facts. If you don't know every single thing about something, and then that would lead you to maybe different kinds of thoughts, or it might lead you to not actually reinforce the belief, because now you no longer have a faith in that belief.
Right.
This has freed me up. This has completely freed me up, because now if I start to get mad about something, I go, well, I don't really know for sure if that's exactly the case. Or if I start to feel a negative feeling of any kind, I start to question that. Now, you might go, that'll just turn me into just some sort of a non-feeling, non-responsive, robot of some sort. But it doesn't. It turns beliefs into preferences, and then it turns thoughts into observations. So when you zoom out, those are not nearly as strong, and they don't affect you nearly as much.
I like how you explain that. Beliefs become, how did you say it? Beliefs become?
Preferences.
Yeah, that's right. I like that, because it's like a lot of the times in life we talk in terms of needs when what we're really talking about is wants. You know what I mean? And whenever we
Sure.
say
Yep.
something like, oh, this can't happen, it's like, well, no, it can happen. You just would prefer it not to happen. And that's the shift that kind of happened for
Exactly.
me, is like these things that used to be, personal rules, this has to happen, or else I'm going to be miserable, or blah, blah, blah. You scale it back and you go, well, of course I would prefer to do this, or not. I would prefer if this didn't happen to me, but I can't necessarily control that. So if it happens, I got to deal with it. You know what I mean? It's a totally different approach,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. So now,
that's
of
brilliant.
course, you take this and you put it into the context of all of the spiritual teachings. The Buddha said that suffering is nothing but resistance, right?
Hmm.
Resisting to what is. So now, if you have a belief about something and it makes you feel bad, you probably believe that it's wrong or something. You go into the should and the shouldn't,
Hmm.
and you go into the I don't like and I don't want and I don't. You go into the resistance.
Yeah.
Essentially, a belief is, if it's a negative, it's causing you any kind of negative implication, then it's really resistance, if you think about it that way.
Yeah.
So this goes into a larger context. The no belief is true, and the beliefs and emotions and the thoughts are an application of that. Then that leads to my other way of living, and that's just allow and love. So if I allow things to happen because I don't have a belief that it should be different, then that just, I mean, it just like dropping a pack. It
Right.
drops the pack off my back. I'm not mad, walking around mad anymore. I'm not walking around judgmental. If you don't have a belief, you can't be judgmental.
It's very true.
If you think about it that way, because all judgment is nothing but a belief that you're right and somebody else is wrong.
Yeah, you're assigning a value to a person, and it's your arbitrary, value. You just,
Completely
yeah,
arbitrary because
totally.
it's based on some sort of belief that was programmed into your head sometime a long time ago. Now, can you help that the fact that you grew up and you grew up in a family or a certain way of thinking or a certain economics or a certain race or certain country or whatever? You can't help that. The only way to break out of this is to question your beliefs. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I'm talking about here. There may
Yeah.
be other ways.
So Greg, in order to question your beliefs, one of the first things you talked about when we opened up this video was that there's a layer of beliefs that we're not even aware exists. And that these are the
Absolutely.
beliefs that are the most detrimental to us, because by not knowing that they exist, they influence us in ways we can't quite understand. So how do you find those underlying beliefs? I call them like assumptions or presumptions or whatever you want to call them, but
Okay.
they're not even verbal, they're not even explicit, they're implicit in the fact that they're just foregone conclusions, right? Like gravity, for example. We don't ever think about our belief in gravity, but it is a belief. It's just so deep that it's
Right.
just there. It's like the decor.
Exactly. Now, here's my example on the whole thing about gravity is that you can take it way out and go, well, do we even exist, and or are we in a computer program, and does matter exist? Does time exist? Does all that, does space exist and all that stuff? And I don't know the answers to that. So if I don't really know the answers to that, then I don't really know if gravity really is here, and I don't know. And people would look at that and go, well, but the fact of the matter is gravity is very, very practical. It works, and it works all the time so far, and it's not really bothering me that much.
Yeah, it's not a huge point of contention, or
It's
us.
not.
Yeah, it's not a
It's
big
it's
deal.
it's a it's one of the more common things that we all have in common that we're not going to argue about.
Yeah,
Really,
very true.
really, for
Yeah.
the most part.
Well, and I
I'm
think the
not going
thing
to
with
argue that it
gravity
doesn't
is it's
exist.
relative, right? I mean, it's not everywhere,
Yeah,
obviously. It's here and we need it here, and it's a good thing it's here, but if you go out into the abyss of space, there's no gravity there. So
right.
it's
Scientists might say
relatively
there's no
true.
gravity because there's no matter, and then I'll go, well, what is matter?
It's a bit of
Because
something with a lot of nothing. That's what matter seems to be.
right, you keep zooming in with the electron microscope, you find that there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's just empty
So
space.
yeah, so I'm not going to argue the fact that belief. I'm not going to argue the belief in gravity. All right. Now I'm not. Now you could go. You could take it a little more on a more practical level, and just take it to the current political divide in the United States. Now everybody's for the most part, many people, not everybody, many people have strong beliefs right now. I know you're not in the United States, let's call it North America, but let's say that we have beliefs, and I don't know that they're right. And the reason I don't know that the reason I don't know mine are right is because I used to believe the other complete other side, and I've completely changed my approach. And I don't believe anything that I used to believe before. And that happens to a lot of people. But what that gives me is the ability to say, yeah, I understand why you think that, because I used to think that. And now I have this other belief, but it's more of a preference. So I know that I know that I'm not certain that it's right, if you follow me.
Yep.
So I had a belief that I knew was true, and I questioned it. And now I believe something completely different, but at least I know that it's a preference now. I know that I can't prove it, and I know that it's not the gospel or whatever of politics. So now I know that it's just a preference, and
But
that's
if
what it does.
But if you were asked to justify it, you're saying that you can't prove it. I'm sure that you have empirical observations and other reasons for believing what you believe now, just as you had reasons for believing what you believed before, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can take every graph, you can take every economic indicator, you can take every unemployment statistic, or you can take every welfare statistic, and you can take whatever, all the numbers, all the graphs, all the way that we've tried to put data to it, to put science to it, to put any kind of observation to it, and you can make your case either side. Right.
Yeah. The numbers can be interpreted any number of ways, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's more to it than that.
Yeah. So whatever I'm going to answer your question now. How do you know that those beliefs are there?
Yeah.
You have thoughts.
Yeah.
And whenever you have a thought, you question the thought, and then you go, well, how do I know that thought is true? And now you're going down into the belief that's underneath the thoughts. Because see, the beliefs were the bedrock. They grew into emotions, and then the thoughts are just the things that come and go all the time.
Yeah.
I got another drawing that shows the beliefs are the trunk of the tree.
Yeah.
The emotions are the branches, and the thoughts are the leaves. Because the leaves come and go.
Right.
And the thoughts come and go all the time. There's thousands or hundreds of thousands of thoughts that come every day.
Yeah.
But they continue to come, and you really can't stop them.
Well, yeah. I mean, short of trying to meditate the whole time, consciously trying to, keep your mind silent, which would be exhausting, I think, after a while.
It's challenging, and most people have a tough time. But even if you get really good at it, even if you sat around for an hour and a half twice a day meditating, and you did get your alpha brain waves down to 1 or whatever the measurement is, then you're still going to come back up into a normal waking state. And you're still going to end up having some thoughts at some point, I would think.
Yeah,
there
I
aren't
think
many
so.
people that walk around that don't have a single thought that comes into their mind. There may be some of those, and those are probably some of those may be gurus. I don't know. I'm not one of those. But so when you have a thought, then you say, well, that thought that thought probably is based in something. Now, it is the kinds of thoughts that you have are based on the level of consciousness that you're at. And then the other picture I have. So this is just the very, very first picture, and we'll put them all together. The other one I've shared with you, where there's different levels, like people that like in the depths of an ocean.
Yeah.
Right. So there's depths of an ocean, and the thoughts that you have are going to be surrounded, kind of like most of the thoughts are going to be very, very similar. So like if the ocean is 10,000 feet deep in some areas, 3,000 meters. Convert. I'm talking Canadian. If it's 3,000 meters deep someplace, then the life down there is going to be significantly different than the life of the kinds of fish that are and creatures that are at the surface. And they're gonna react differently, and they're gonna have a completely different life. Well, that's the way humans are. Humans that have a certain level of consciousness have certain kinds of beliefs. They're correlated, and they tend to have the same kinds of thoughts. So and when you talk about birds of a feather flock together, well, that's generally true.
Yeah, very true.
Because they resonate. So you talk to somebody who's complaining and angry and always pissed off all the time. Well, they tend to hang out with other people like that, and they like to commiserate. Well, if somebody doesn't have the same belief system, you're probably not going to, the conversation's probably not going to last a super long time because
Very true.
you have different kinds of beliefs.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I think people are also seeking certain things from others, and those types of people that you described, they're seeking people who are sympathetic to their complaints and who may have complaints of their own, so they can, share them together. When they come upon someone who doesn't satisfy that need, someone who's putting a positive spin on all of their complaints, they
Right.
don't generally want to hang out. To summarize it in a way, this is in your approach, this is kind of like the first step in a way, right? I mean, this is when
Yeah.
you start to question some of your basic assumptions and beliefs about
Yes.
things.
So this would be chapter one if there were a follow-on, an amount of information. This is the baseline, and I take this particular diagram and I do other things with it. I take it and I expand it. I take it and I amplify it. I take it and I draw different things on it. So this would be the baseline understanding of moving forward with the information.
Right.
hmm
Yeah.
But if we can come to an understanding that it is our beliefs that trigger the emotions foster the thoughts, and the thoughts just reinforce the beliefs. If we can tentatively say, okay, I'll listen to that. I'm not asking you to believe it. I'll say I'll listen to that and take that to the next step of the conversation. We can do that. So here's just I can give you a couple of ideas on that. Is that most self-help hangs out on the left side of this drawing. Most self-help says change your thoughts, change your life. Well, that is false to me, because you can't change your thoughts if you don't change your beliefs. Based on this picture,
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't work. That's painting over rust. And if you paint over rust, the rust just comes right back up.
Right.
So if you sit there and just say, I'm great, I'm rich, I'm wonderful, I'm fantastic, and you just say that all day long, but you have beliefs that undercut that, or that are underneath that are not changing, then those thoughts are just gonna bounce off, or they're not gonna stick.
Right.
So the self-help world is all over there. The psychological world. So you go to therapy. The therapy world is all going to be kind of down at the bottom of this thing, and the therapy is going to work with your emotions and your thoughts. But if they don't fix the beliefs, then you're still going to. I mean, you could go through a lifetime of therapy and still be dealing with the same stuff. My observation is with different people. And if you're just going over there with beliefs and emotions, then that's going to be religion. And I'm saying that you can change those, but if you don't deal with how that whole circle works, you can try to change people's beliefs by indoctrinating them into things. But if you don't understand how the rest of that thing works and how that reinforces the thoughts on the backside, then that's an incomplete cycle. So you have religion, you have self-help, and you have traditional psychotherapy that all deal with this parts of this diagram, but none of them actually deal with the entire diagram.
Right. Yeah. And unless you deal with the whole picture, you're not going to get any real traction, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense to me. And, the only thing that I would suggest or add is
Mhm.
that I think that the relationship is multi-directional. And so I do agree that beliefs trigger emotions foster thoughts, and thoughts reinforce beliefs. But I also
Okay.
think that beliefs produce thoughts that produce emotions that reinforce beliefs. And I think that it can go many different directions. I think it's kind of like, it's just a loop, and trying to find out where the sort of point of origin is, or what's
Mhm.
the sort of main influencer. To me, it's all three working in tangent, and so sometimes you can reverse the direction, and I can kind of see why you would deliberately think certain thoughts. To me, that would actually have an effect on your beliefs subliminally if you repeated the same thoughts over and over again.
Okay, I do want to thank you for pointing that
Yeah,
out. I
no,
want to make a clarification
and it's like,
that,
hey, and I'm not sorry, just to be clear, I'm not disagreeing with what you've
oh, no,
said. I'm
no,
just, just adding my own personal observations to this, and this is kind of like how we learn from each other, right?
it is absolutely. And I'm glad that, because I want you to poke holes in it, or ask questions, or ask me to clarify, or as much as possible. I do
Excellent.
want to say that this is mostly the unconscious stuff that the human mind, we can actually think functional thoughts. Okay, we can use the brain and say, okay, I need to figure out this math problem, and we can use the brain to say, I need to plan a trip. So the directed thoughts that we have, the functional part of it that we are actually using on purpose, yeah, that does work.
Right.
The thing about it is that I don't think that you can take your thoughts and change your emotions. You can't go backwards and try to functionally take those thoughts and justify your way out of an emotion. It's hard to do.
Right.
But the 99% of the thoughts that you have any given day just come out of the blue, or they're kind of a function of that level of consciousness that you're hanging out in, and it's a function of the beliefs. So what my goal is, when we go through all of the different diagrams, is to say how questioning the beliefs actually moves you in the level of consciousness and makes you and draws you up in one of the pictures vertically, just because that's the way the picture's drawn.
Mm-hmm.
How questioning your beliefs can actually change the level of consciousness on purpose with directed thought, and how it can break you through some paradigms. So there's a couple of major paradigms that it can break you through, and we'll talk about those in later pictures and later drawings.
I'd love to do this some more. So yeah, get the next one ready, my friend.
Okay.
Well, do you want to just wrap it up with a little summary of sort of what we talked about?
The premise, the overall premise is no belief is true. And so what I do is first I try to define what a belief is, and then I try to define what truth is, and I do that in the first part, in the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
So then I go into the nature of beliefs and how they affect everything that we do and everything that we feel and everything that we think, and then via this diagram. And when we do that, we can just say, okay, this is operating all the time, all day long. We don't necessarily know it. And if we don't like the results that we currently have, meaning if we don't like the way we feel, we don't like the way where we are in life, we don't like something, then we can start to question our beliefs and see how this actually has an effect on the things that we don't like. That's where we're headed.
Nice. And I love that this is the absolute reverse of what most of us would do. You were saying, you don't like something about your life, so you question your beliefs. Well, that's very counterintuitive. Most people don't like something in their life. They try to change that thing in their life. They don't go and examine their beliefs about that thing. So
well, I spent 30 years reading self-help books, so I got a pretty good feel for how that works.
Yeah, no doubt, eh?
I probably read 1,500 self-help books, and I call that polishing the turd. So
Yeah.
you can get a lot better at the current belief that you have potentially,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're not going to have significant change. I don't want to say that anything in self-help doesn't work. I don't want to say that at all, because it's helped me dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
But it helped me in different ways. But now that I'm ready to take the next step, I think that that there is a place for self-help. But you're right. This is not the same thing. This is moving level of consciousness. It's not just getting better at where you are. This is moving at an entirely different level up. Yes.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Greg, for the last minute call as well. That was awesome. I just sent you an email and you're like, let's do it.
I just happened to be sitting there. But next time, if we have a little more planning, I'll make sure the dogs are away before we start.
Yeah, and like I said, it's no concern for me. And if anybody who's listening has a problem with the dogs, too friggin' bad. Dogs exist. They bark. That's what they do. All right. So the next one, what's the next slide going to be? This one is no belief is true. What's the next one going to be called?
What? Well, it's called slide 2 right now.
All right. Come up with a cool title and we'll shoot that one next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Bye.